Hello, everybody, and thank you for tuning into the Liberty Report. With us today is Daniel McAdams, our co-host. Daniel, good to see you.
Good morning, Dr. Paul. How are you this morning?
Doing fine, thank you.
Good.
Doing well. Well, we have to flip a coin today. What should we consider the most important thing to talk about?
Yes.
Well, is it a war against COVID? Or is it a war against the Russians? We are going to have to pick. But in a way, it's all the same war. It's big government against sanity, And if they get bored with domestic affairs, then they go to international affairs. If they get bored with that, they might even flip back and go back to international affairs. You'd think we would have had enough of COVID, especially since the kids aren't wearing masks. I don't know if maybe in California they might have to still wear masks.
Who knows?
But most people say it's over, that way. So the audiences for some of these TV stations that lived off that for a while, they went from an audience of 3% up to 3.5%. But and I remember very clearly when things were dramatically shifted. All of a sudden they said, "Well, COVID is gone, and now the new COVID. We have to have a target. How can you have a war if you don't have an enemy?" Saddam Hussein one time was 10 times worse than Hitler ever was. So where they switched to Putin. Putin's the monster, and he's not even allowed to present his side of the story.
No.
That's what bothers me, because I don't find sainthood easily on either sides that are in charge of a lot of weapons, and do a lot of threatening, and people end up getting killed. So now they went from COVID to Putin. Can you believe it? Yeah, you can believe me, because you asked me if I remembered this. So now they're switching. It's back to COVID again. So is that a sign that the war's over?
Or maybe not going as they expected.
They're going to have to do something anyway. They can live with both, and if the two disappeared, believe me, they would still have another enemy. And the victims are always the same. You never have to worry about that. It's the average person in this country, the middle class America, the people who are trying to make a living, because everything government does spends money. And the tax, where does the tax go? The biggest tax is the inflation tax, because it's so destructive to society. So they're shifting back and forth, but our president's on top of this. I think he's reading a little bit better. He doesn't spontaneously give a speech very well yet, except the media loves it, because that's where they find hints of what's really on his mind, and find out things are rather bad. So they're shifting back and forth now. Biden says, this stuff is bad. The virus is back again, and we can't ignore it. And the drug companies tell us, we need a little boost on the bottom line. So, I remember I was influenced a lot, with the polio vaccine. You never heard of people taking a booster.
Let alone 5.
But now, this has to be a mistake. It says, another one, FDA expects to authorize 6th RNA dose in the fall? Couldn't be true. But I'll keep my eyes and ears open to see if we can verify this. But when you think about it, yes, anything's possible with these clowns. This is what they do for a living. And the weird thing is how many people are so gullible. But they're not gullible by nature, but they are terrorized easily by nature. They're made to be scared, so they always have to. So they might have to work a little bit harder, to talk everybody into getting their 6th shot. Maybe some haven't even gotten their 2nd or 3rd. But this whole idea, which is a real challenge, to the whole system of credibility of the government. So Biden is our leader, and sometimes he doesn't lead us in the right direction. So he had to be an example, and that's one thing I can guarantee you. if some fluke had happened and I had been the president, I would never have stood in front of the nation and say, well, I don't really want to do this, but I need this shot. Here, go ahead, do the hit. This will teach everybody a good lesson. It wouldn't be my political training, but my medical training would say, don't be such a braggart and say, I'm going to save the world by taking number 6.
Yeah.
So anyway, he did it, and the best part of that whole thing is he looked at it, he said, what am I doing this in front of the whole nation?
Yeah. In fact, we have some videos of that, and that's why we wanted to say this feels like a pivot back, because all of a sudden there was a big high-profile event with Biden yesterday where he made a big announcement. He took a shot on the fake stage, and we can actually watch these 2 clips and listen to what he said. That first one, I think, is 20 seconds of that first clip. Here we go.
The launch of COVID.gov, a one-stop shop where anyone in America can find what they need to navigate the virus. Free vaccines and boosters, free at-home tests, high-quality masks, and for the latest information,
COVID.gov. The government's going to get all your COVID needs taken care of. So you'd be thinking, well, there must be a spike in COVID, and all of a sudden, a new website. This is after more than 2 years. And show that first picture now. So I went and had a look at what's going on with COVID. It's gone. We had that big Omicron spike, which thankfully didn't result in a spike in deaths, and it's gone. So why, at the very end of the end game, are they rolling out a new website to give you free masks and free shots and free popcorn or whatever? It's pretty funny. But then, as you alluded to, Dr. Paul, in that same high-profile clip, here comes Biden setting an example. Let's play that second video. I think we want 23 seconds of the second video of Biden up there on a fake White House set. If we can get the second one rolling.
to get my second booster shot. I'm not sure why I'm doing it on stage. I'm just doing it again.
Mr. President, what is the danger of Putin being left in the dark by military advisors?
I'm reluctant to comment.
Can you comment on the declassified intelligence that he doesn't trust his military leadership since it is declassified?
No.
Mr. President, did you ask William to provide
I
security?
think that's about enough of that one. I don't even know why I'm doing this on stage.
Right. But you know, he undermines, which is not unusual, he undermines the very thing he said, because he's getting this booster shot because we're professionals, we're the most modern, and we have all this technique and available, and we have the mask for you in case the boosters don't work.
Yeah.
They work on it,
job.
and then you put up the sign to show it doesn't work, but they still have to prepare for it, and I guess they think they know what they're doing, but I have no idea what goes through people's minds like this, you know, other than dollar signs for a certain group that are totally unethical.
And what I didn't do, and I wish I had done actually, is found a chart of how many people are getting these fourth and fifth shots. But my guess is that the uptake for this is very low. I mean, you have people that are at they're the true believers, the dead enders, and they probably are lining up. My guess is that the people who got the first two, a lot of those people are feeling a lot of regret, especially when they're looking at a lot of these side effects, negative side effects. But our friend Jordan Schachtel, who's been so good this whole time covering COVID, he has a piece that you mentioned here. Another one, FDA expects to authorize a sixth mRNA dose. Let's put that up. This is the article that he refers to. After FDA greenlights a second COVID booster, official says another could come in the fall. Another booster in the fall. And in his article, if we just go to the next, here's something from the article, which I think he makes a very important point, Jordan Schachtel does. He said the current mRNA shot was designed by both Pfizer and Moderna to target the ostensibly original Wuhan strain of 2019. This strain no longer exists in circulation. And according to gene sequencing, it has not been the dominant strain for about 2 years. The 2019 shot has never been updated, despite claims of an update being as easy as a computer-generated copy and paste procedure. Pfizer and Moderna both claimed that they were working on an Omicron vaccine, projecting it would be ready in March of 2022, but they seem to have scrapped the plan for reasons unknown to the public. I think that's a critical paragraph, Dr. Paul.
Absolutely, and I think your chart is very dramatic too. They have a problem that they can't find.
Yeah.
And I keep thinking about how excited I was, maybe prematurely, but it might have been a year ago when at the football stadium.
Yeah.
When 100,000
Oh,
people
yeah.
showed up and nobody had masks on.
Yeah.
At the peak, everybody was still hysterical
Omicron,
about this
yeah.
whole thing. And all of a sudden, so that to me was a sign of the kind of democracy I like. The
Yeah.
people spoke.
They voted
And they
with
did
their-
that. So, but they still, that doesn't slow them down. They have no shame whatsoever that they can come back with all the innuendos and terrifying statements and all the expense to the tune of millions, billions, trillions of dollars they've
Yeah.
spent on this, and they don't worry about it because of the economics behind it. Because you can't ignore hot wars like what's going on and has gone on in our history, especially in the last, since this century started, and also the amount. It was unbelievable. If any, I bet nobody really predicted when this thing first broke through that we would be spending trillions of dollars. Most people would say, they might be stupid enough to spend billions on
Yeah.
this thing, but trillions of dollars, and even at this late stage, they don't stop.
Yeah.
And there's a bit of ignorance there, but there's a bit of lack of common sense and a lack of any sense of guilt when they make a mistake.
Yeah.
When people argue, you guys that want people to make up their own mind, you mean they just have to talk to their doctor and make a mistake? What if they do make a mistake? Which is the way medicine has been working. Medicine is not perfect.
Yeah.
But what happens when Fauci makes a mistake?
Yeah, nothing.
And what happens when Fauci makes the mistakes and he does it in collusion with people who, the bigger the mistake, the bigger the profits?
Yeah, yeah. I remember back when they were doing the stimulus checks, and remember it was Thomas Massey, Representative Massey, who said, he did the calculations, I don't have them in front of me, but how this is going to cost orders of magnitude, multiple times the amount that you're getting, you're going to be paying back. And when we're seeing that now at the store, with the prices, with inflation through the roof, yeah, you got $1,000 check, you're going to be paying back $5,000 or $6,000 in inflation.
See, he had accurate projections, and a few of us were paying attention,
Yeah.
but no, he has been really good because he works from a basic set of principles that if you do A, B usually occurs, even though you have to factor in human action.
Yeah.
And you can come up with some pretty good answers.
It does make you wonder why they want us to now focus on something other than the Ukraine situation. Maybe it's because all of the sanctions have not really hurt like they were supposed to. In fact, they seem to be hurting the U.S. and Europe, with President Putin saying now you got to pay in rubles, and the rest of Europe saying no, we don't want to do that. Okay, then you don't get any gas.
Yeah, it's pretty neat. I wish this was done under the circumstances of less violence,
Yeah.
and somebody playing these games. But even the pseudo-violence, which is really violence, and that is if there's not a hot war going on, then there's these authoritarians in the IMF and the World Bank and NATO throwing their weight around and punishing people, and people getting upset, and then pretending that there is an almighty dollar, and the dollar is needed, and there's petrodollars. If you don't use petrodollars, you're not going to get your oil. And to think that somebody in a country as big as Russia actually challenging that, pay us in rubles, which they have every right in the world to do. Sometimes I question the use of violence, but I love it when he says, use rubles. Rubles, we're not going to sell you we're not going to sell you the oil. So that fight is going on. But I think today the markets were a little reactive to this, because he said that that if you don't pay for it, we're not sending you any oil. Yeah. No credit from us. Why give them credit now if they the way they treat people who don't do exactly as they say? This is international canceling, and same thing happens. They think, that works with these big companies and big countries. Why don't we use this in social things? We'll teach people how to be obedient and conformist, and teach them how never to challenge what the government says. And we're at that point now, except what we're trying to do is awaken more people every day. Hopefully we do some every day, and I hope everybody who says, hey, this stuff about freedom, that makes sense. I think I'll spread our message.
Yeah. Well, we didn't talk about this before the show, but as you were talking, I was remembering I read this article this morning from Mike Shedlock. You probably read it too, on Zero Hedge. And the title is, "The Ruble Regains 100% of its Losses After Russia Invaded Ukraine." Now, it took a big 35% hit when all these sanctions and things were introduced, but now it's rebounded to the pre-war levels. And Shedlock explains why in the article. I recommend that people read it. But if you were going to put it in 3 words, the whole article, sanctions don't work. Right. And he goes point by point and makes the point of why they don't work and how they don't work, certainly as intended. So that's a good article to read, I think. But the second topic that we want to talk about is Putin's price hike. Biden is doing something about it, Dr. Paul. Gas is going to be almost free tomorrow. Let's put up that next clip, and you'll see why. This is from Zero Hedge. Biden administration unveils response to Putin's price hike at the pump. Goldman and Trafigura unimpressed. What are they going to do, Dr. Paul? They're going to release 1 million barrels a day from the strategic petroleum reserves every day up until the eve of the midterm elections. 1 million new barrels.
But psychologically, for a while, that seems to have an impact, because the markets immediately react, there's going to be a lot of people in there, I don't believe it, but there's a lot of dumb people who are going to think this is going to really lower the price of oil long term. Some people even know that that is incidental to what's the Fed's doing, how much money are going to pretend, because there's still articles out right now that they're looking at QE5, that they're going to print even faster. So no, 1 million barrels sounds like a lot to me. Should have an effect. Yes, if it was all going to one country and things were more normal. But there have been some experts in the market. They're mainly, oil entrepreneurs, producing and selling and in the commodity market. They say this is a drop in the bucket. I mean, it sounds like a lot to me, but it's still, they say it's a drop in the bucket. It will not have any effect. What it will do is eliminate the one little justification that could be used, for a country to have some strategic reserve. Basically, I shy away from that we have to prepare for every war for the next 20 years and store up everything that we need. That markets generally will work if you allow them to. But they said that the markets, dismiss this immediately, and it will eliminate. The oil prices will go back up again. But what they don't emphasize is that even if you had a little bit, it would be temporary because it's going to be in the money supply. But the people who look at this say, don't get overconfident, because the one excuse that psychologically I endorse, although I didn't vote for the strategic reserve, although it's in our backyard, we're only about 5 miles from one of those reserves.
Get some of that, yeah.
But the one thing is, if push comes to shove and things get so weird and somebody blows up all our oil production here, freedom would solve all the problems. But if something happened, having a couple barrels of oil for military emergency, for defending the country, maybe we'll give it a little bit of an edge. But that whole thing is now eliminated. They take it and they're spending it to manipulate prices. They're in a price control business for political reasons. It's not even thinking that it's going to produce, get rid of the inflation. So that's not going to happen. And on this reserve currency and what Russia is doing. You know, they they want the ruble to be used, and they talk about getting together with China and using gold and commodities. But and they have, you know, they're big countries. They have a lot of natural resources. They're motivated right now to do something. It would not be easy for them. But there are countries that have a lot of commodities, and you could say, well, can't they sort of have their commodities backing up their currency? In a way, that can be said, but it still boils down. You know, people they're trying to fix the rubles to a certain amount of a weight of gold, which is good. But the bottom line always is, what are the printers doing? Are they printing money? And that won't work. People will ask me, well, where would you set the price of gold? Well, it's best not to set it. Let the market do this. But they say the reason is they say, you know, it's bumped around $2,000 an ounce. They say, well, a little leeway. Let's say that we're going to guarantee the dollar at $2,000 an ounce. You think, wow, that's a pretty good deal. And for a few days, it might seem to be helping, but it doesn't help. It doesn't count, because if gold and the money supply can be increased the way they do, if they don't address the subject of spending and printing money, you know, these fixings won't help. But that doesn't mean that what Russia is doing is useless, because you know, if they stick to their guns and on certain cases say, look, we're not going to sell you your oil unless you pay in rubles.
Yeah. Interesting. Well, I'm gonna close out if you think we're done, and I'm gonna close out with a little surprise clip for you, Dr. Paul. I know you haven't seen this guy in a while, and I know you've been missing him. So let's put on that bonus clip. If we can, cue that up. I know it's going to take a second to cue that up, but it's going to be very exciting for you and for our viewers. We get that, hopefully that bonus clip is over there. I'm pretty sure I sent it over. I hear clicking back there, so here we go. Look who's back. Speaking of COVID back, let's listen to what he has to say. We'll watch the whole clip.
I'm interested in your reluctance to use the word lockdown. Do you think 2 years on that they were worth it, or were they too severe?
You know, I don't think we're ever going to be able to determine what the right balance is. I think the restrictions, if you want to use that word, which I tend to shy away from, lockdown, there's certainly prevented a lot of infections, prevented a lot of hospitalizations, and prevented a lot of deaths. There's no doubt about that. Obviously, when you do have that kind of restriction on society, there are unintended negative consequences, particularly in children who are not allowed to go to school, in the psychological and mental health aspects it has on children, in the economic stress that it puts on society in general, on individual families. Obviously, those are negative consequences that are unintended.
Okay, I think there were two big takeaways from that, Dr. Paul. Number one, Fauci admitting, I don't think we're ever going to be able to determine whether the lockdowns were worth it. And the second one, and other people have commented on this, this is the first time Fauci has ever talked about the unintended consequences, i.e. the harms that were done by lockdowns.
Yeah, and I thought he could be more explicit about it, because he doesn't talk about the real measurement, because he's talking about how many hospitalizations he's presented, how many lives they have saved. But the unintended consequences, he's talking about social, kids, and that sort of thing. But what about the numbers not yet calculated that are complications from booster shots? It seems like there's probably more when they get a booster shot than from the initial shot. But it's so hard to get the actual facts and figures, but that would be my suspicion. But the whole thing is yes, that's good that he's moving in the directions. We can't deny the fact that doing what we did to the kids is not a significant event, because they keep thinking of thank goodness for the parents. You know, going in and confronting the PTA and all. But, you know, there was a report out this week, once again, that comes to mind on this is how the collusion with the school unions participated with the CDC. That is criminal. It should be illegal, immoral, unconstitutional, and stupid.
Yeah, it's stupid. Well, I'm all done. I just want to give you that surprise clip. So
well, thanks a lot.
I'll turn it back to you.
All right, very good. I want to thank everybody for tuning in once again to the Liberty Report. We are pleased the way things are going, although there's a lot of jobs out there, so we feel like we will be busy, we will stay busy. And the one thing that I've always tried to emphasize, whether I'm on the road speaking or in a campaign or whatever, is that when you're dealing with these serious subjects, and these are serious, that people should try to make sure that it's done with individuals that share views and that there's a little bit of enjoyment with it, which sometimes would be very difficult because there's so many tragedies. But I think that I have found an association with people who are like-minded when they get together and we have conferences and all. It seems that they really develop friendships and they get along and have a good time. So that to me is important, but that should not distract. It just means that it's a tool you use in order to present the case for liberty, because if it's all dire and it's all, you can't do this, you can't do that, you're going to suffer this, you'll have to do it by yourself, nobody will help you. And yet the government does have a tremendous responsibility to protecting the conditions under which we live. And that is, their goal should be making sure there's no interference with the personal liberties of each individual, which means that's a different society. So the government's role is there in a way. Some people call that negative. Yes, it's negative. Thou shalt not interfere with the lives of others. Thou shalt not interfere with voluntary transactions, social or economic. The world would be better off if we could follow those very simple, clear rules. I want to thank everybody for tuning in today to the Liberty Report. Please come back soon.